Have you ever felt like you were carrying a burden that didn't start with you? As if, from an early age, you were called to deal with pain, silences, and patterns that weren't even yours, but that, somehow, you knew you had to face? Maybe you grew up being the different one in your family, the one who questioned everything, the one who felt too much, the one who saw beyond. And because of that, you were often silenced, disbelieved, or even rejected. But what if I told you that there's a much bigger reason for all this? Viktor Frankl, a concentration camp survivor and creator of logotherapy, discovered that suffering, when it finds a purpose, turns into healing, not only for the person experiencing it, but for everyone around them. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about here. Because the chosen ones do not live for nothing. They carry spiritual scars that reveal a calling, an ancestral calling. Before we dive into this universe of self-knowledge, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel, like it, and activate notifications. This way, you can ensure that you are always connected to content that inspires and transforms. In this video, you will understand why certain pains in your life were never divine punishment. You will discover how they reveal a sacred mission that began before you were even born. And perhaps, for the first time, you will be able to see your own story through the eyes of redemption. Because you are not here by chance. You are the answer. You are continuity. You are the healing that your lineage has been waiting for generations. Have you ever wondered why you had to face so much so soon? While others lived ordinary lives, you felt the weight of the world weighed differently on your shoulders. Maybe you grew up being told you were too sensitive, or that you needed to toughen up. But the truth is that the chosen ones are not spared pain. They are trained by it, not for punishment, but for purpose. When the spirit is great, so is the shaping. Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the concentration camps, discovered that pain, no matter how absurd it may seem, can be a portal, a silent call, a whisper from God saying, "Prepare yourself, because your mission is great." And if you feel like you've always had to fight harder than others, maybe it's because your life carries a rare spiritual signature. And this signature manifests itself in the form of spiritual scars. The pain of the chosen is never random. Every tear shed is rooted in a divine calling. It is as if heaven marks its warriors with experiences that shape them from an early age. While some learn with time, the chosen learn from loss. While others seek comfort, the chosen are pushed into the depths. Because it is there, in the valley of the shadow, that the mission begins to reveal itself. Many times, you don't even know how to explain why you suffer so much. But deep down, you feel that there is something more. This constant feeling that pain is not just pain, but a message, that there is a greater purpose in life behind each challenge faced. This silent awareness is the voice of the spirit. It is the call that does not shout. It just pulsates, insists, and waits to be understood. And no, this doesn't mean you need to romanticize suffering. No one chooses to go through loss. But there is a difference between pain with purpose and pain without direction. The former builds, the latter destroys. And that's why Viktor Frankl said, "He who has a why can face any how." The chosen ones are precisely those who, even when broken, continue to search for meaning. Because they know pain was the invitation. So, the next time you ask yourself, "Why me?" try to turn the question around, "What for me?" Because maybe, back then, when everything fell apart, the universe was just trying to get your attention. Maybe that morning, that silence, that injustice, were the beginning of something much bigger. A spiritual journey that only you could experience. And that, my brother or sister, is not a punishment. It is a summons. How many times have you looked at your life and thought, "None of this makes sense"? The feeling of being lost, disconnected, on the fringes of everything that seemed normal to others. But what if I told you that this apparent emptiness is actually the womb of your mission? Viktor Frankl realized this in the worst possible place, in the concentration camps, where there was no logic, justice, or consolation. And it was precisely there that he found something powerful, the birth of meaning. It is at the bottom of the pit that many chosen ones discover the reason for their existence. When everything around them falls apart, when support disappears, when dreams are shattered, that is when the whisper of the spiritual call is heard. Not as a scream, but as a presence. A silent certainty that there is something greater waiting to emerge from the crisis. And this is not madness. This is the soul being awakened to its divine mission. Many people confuse chaos with failure, but in reality, chaos is the fertile ground for spiritual transformation. It is as if life were dismantling everything that was superficial to reveal what is eternal. The path of the chosen ones passes through this territory. They are not spared from the collapse. They are called to cross it, because it is there that the purpose of life begins to germinate. Frankl teaches us that when we cannot change our circumstances, we are invited to change ourselves. And this profound change is not aesthetic nor immediate. It is internal. It is existential. It is a crisis that sculpts a strong soul. Emptiness ceases to be a punishment and becomes a passage. And each step in the dark becomes an alignment with God. You may be in that moment right now, when nothing makes sense, when the world seems colorless, when even faith seems distant. But don't despair, because it is precisely in that place that meaning begins to emerge. The divine call doesn't come when everything is fine. It comes when you are about to give up, and yet you choose to continue. That is unshakable faith. That is spiritual redemption. And maybe you think you're alone in this, but the chosen ones always go through this tunnel before they see the light. This isn't about punishment. This is about preparation, because only those who have felt the emptiness can lead others to fulfillment. And that makes you more than a survivor. It makes you a conduit of meaning. And the next step on this journey begins now. You know that feeling of living in pain that you don't understand, as if it doesn't have a clear origin, as if the weight is too great, even without an apparent reason? Many chosen ones feel this. And there is a spiritual explanation for this that Viktor Frankl helps us understand. Inherited pain. The kind that crosses generations. You're not just living your story. You're clearing stories that came before you. The chosen ones are usually the most sensitive in the family, those who notice hidden wounds from an early age. They are children who feel their parents' pain, grandchildren who carry the silence of their grandparents. They are resilient souls who, even without knowing it, have been called to do something that no one else has been able to do: heal. And this is no easy task. It requires immense inner strength, a faith that endures even when everything seems to be falling apart. Ancestral healing is a silent but powerful process. It's when you begin to realize that certain patterns, abandonment, scarcity, dependency, loneliness, have been repeating themselves for generations. And then something inside you screams, enough is enough. That scream is the awakening of the soul. It's the voice of the spirit taking on its divine mission, not to repeat, but to transform. You are the crack in the pattern, the turning point in the lineage. Frankl said that all suffering needs a meaning so as not to make the soul sick. And giving meaning to inherited pain is one of the greatest acts of spiritual redemption. It means honoring your family history without being trapped by it. It is like looking back with compassion, but walking firmly towards a new destination. This is spiritual overcoming. This is being a conductor of light. You may be facing internal conflicts that you don't even understand, emotions that come out of nowhere, reactions that seem disproportionate. But know this may not be just yours. Often, it is the body and soul processing pain that has been dormant for decades. And by embracing this with awareness, you begin a process of spiritual healing not only for yourself, but for the collective. So don't minimize what you feel. Don't ignore the signs, because the pain you carry could be the prayer of someone who came before you, someone who couldn't heal in life, and now sees in you the chance for liberation. The chosen ones are not victims. They are bridges, and you are here to be that bridge between the wounded past and the restored future. Have you ever tried to explain your worldview to someone and felt like it was like speaking in another language? Have you ever noticed that your sensitivity bothers people, that your depth scares them, that your faith seems exaggerated to those who live on the surface? This happens because the chosen ones did not come to please. They came to illuminate. And light is not always welcomed by those who are still trapped in the darkness of the ego. Spiritual solitude is one of the hallmarks that mark the souls of the chosen. It is as if the world has no space for everything you feel. But this exclusion is not rejection. It is divine separation. Viktor Frankl said that we only find meaning when we surrender ourselves to something greater than ourselves. And it is precisely this surrender that makes you incomprehensible to those who still live with their eyes only turned outward. You may have tried to fit in. You may have kept quiet to keep the peace. You may have pretended you didn't see, didn't feel, didn't know. But the strong soul of the chosen ones never gets used to spiritual mediocrity. At some point, the spirit cries out, and what was once an attempt to please becomes an impulse to serve, to enlighten, to pave the way, even if in silence, even if without applause. That's why the chosen ones are often the weird ones in the family, the too sensitive ones at school, the intense ones in relationships. But this intensity is divine fuel. It was put there for a reason, to transform. While the world demands adaptation, God calls us to a mission. And this mission doesn't need an audience, it needs courage. Frankl also said that human beings find fulfillment when they forget themselves for the sake of a cause. And the chosen ones feel this deep down in their hearts. When they live to serve, heal, guide, they find peace. It's not about being understood. It's about being a channel, about allowing the light to pass through you and reach those in need, even if it costs you isolation or misunderstanding. So if you feel like no one understands you, that your words are misinterpreted, that your worldview seems too far away, maybe you're on the right path. Because the chosen ones didn't come to follow the map, they came to draw it. And the more you accept that, the brighter your light shines. And where there is light, the next step of the mission always reveals itself. Think about it. How many times have you asked yourself how you're still standing? After everything you've been through, everything you've endured, you should have given up a long time ago. But you didn't. Do you know why? Because there's something inside you that hasn't broken. Something that resists. That insists. And that's no coincidence. It's a sign. A clear sign that you carry the weight of the mission and also the strength to accomplish it. Viktor Frankl believed that suffering only becomes unbearable when the reason for suffering is lost. But the chosen ones, even when everything seems to be falling apart, feel, deep down, that there is a greater purpose. They don't know exactly what it is or how it will happen, but they know it exists. This is alignment with God. It is the unshakable faith that sustains the resilient soul even in the midst of chaos. You were not chosen to survive. You were chosen to transform, to break cycles, to open paths. Your existence is the response of an entire generation that cried out for liberation. If you endured everything you experienced, it was not punishment, it was empowerment. You are the turning point of a lineage marked by pain. Your victory is collective. Your healing is ancestral. And you don't have to be perfect to do this, nor do you have to have everything sorted out. The spiritual transformation of the chosen ones doesn't begin when everything is ready. It begins in the middle of the mess. It begins the day that, even though you're hurt, you decide to keep going. The moment you transform pain into purpose. The moment you decide to turn your fall into a stepping stone. The moment you understand that your life is too valuable to be wasted on resentment. Frankl said that those who have a why can face any how. And this why that pulses within you is not small. You feel it, even if you can't explain it. It's as if something inside you is saying, you didn't come just to go through life. You came to make it different. This is the mark of the chosen ones. They don't just live, they leave a spiritual legacy. So, if you have come this far, it is because there is something sacred about your existence. And if there is still a breath of faith in your chest, even after so many battles, it is because the calling is still active. And this calling will begin to reveal itself with even more strength in the next step of your journey. When pain knocks on the door without explanation, without consolation, without direction, it devastates us from within. The soul collapses, faith hides, and everything seems to lose its shine. Viktor Frankl, who lived through the extremes of human pain, understood something profound. It is not the suffering itself that destroys, it is the lack of meaning. What makes us sick is not the weight of pain, but the absence of a why. And the chosen ones are precisely those who discover this why in the middle of the desert. The difference between being stuck and growing is in the way you look at things. When pain finds purpose, it becomes a portal. It's as if, all of a sudden, what seemed useless becomes a tool, a key, a lesson. And as hard as it may be to accept, the darkest moments in our lives are often the ones that bring us closest to the light. All we need to do is change our focus. All we need to do is ask, what is this pain trying to show me? The chosen ones do not have an easier life. They have a deeper sensitivity. This makes them feel everything more intensely, including suffering. But they are also those who have the greatest potential to transform this pain into testimony, into spiritual healing, into mission, not because they are better, but because they were prepared for it. From an early age, in silence, often alone, Frankl said that it is possible to extract something positive even from the most traumatic experiences, but this requires an internal repositioning. And this repositioning begins when we stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this?" That is the turning point. It is the point where pain stops paralyzing you and starts guiding you. You don't need to deny what you felt, much less pretend that everything is fine. But you do need to find a thread of meaning in the midst of chaos. A purpose that makes your soul breathe again. That reminds you that you were not chosen for nothing. That your path has a divine signature. And that each spiritual scar can become a compass for those who are still lost in pain. And maybe, right now, you are at that crossroads. Tired, hurt, questioning everything. But know this. This existential crisis can be the starting point for your liberation. Because when you understand the spiritual reason for your pain, it changes places. It stops being the villain and becomes the teacher. And the next step in your healing begins with a simple yes. Yes, I accept finding purpose even in this. Have you ever thought that your life story might be exactly what someone needs to hear to keep them from giving up? Sometimes we think that our past was in vain, that everything we went through only served to hurt. But the chosen ones live a different truth. Their suffering is not just theirs. It has a destiny. It has a mission. It carries the potential to be healing. Viktor Frankl said, "Life demands to be lived, despite everything." And you have lived. With pain, yes, but also with purpose. Your spiritual scars are like maps. They show where it hurts, but they also point out the way out. And anyone who has crossed deserts knows how to recognize thirst in the eyes of others. That is why your pain, once transformed, becomes medicine. The testimony of overcoming that you carry can be the answer to someone who is on the edge of the abyss right now. Because there is a language that only those who have suffered understand, and your soul already speaks that language. You don't have to be famous, have millions of followers, or write a book to leave a spiritual legacy. Sometimes, all it takes is a conversation, a video, a comment, a presence. The chosen ones don't heal with formulas, they heal with truth. And it's this truth that emerges when you have the courage to look at your own story without shame, without guilt, without denial, with love and purpose. Frankl reminds us that even in the midst of the most absurd pain, it is possible to find meaning when we turn to others. When what we experience becomes a contribution, the chosen ones feel this, that everything they endured was not just for themselves. It was for all those who are yet to come. That is why every tear you wiped away today could be the reason for someone's smile tomorrow. And yes, it may seem strange to think that your greatest pain can become a gift, but that's how spiritual redemption works. God transforms wounds into bridges, scars into compasses, and seemingly lost stories into life-saving testimonies. Your journey has a reason, and more than that, it has a purpose. There's always someone in the dark waiting for the light that only you can turn on. So don't keep quiet. Don't hide your journey. Because when you share what you've experienced with courage and purpose, the entire universe conspires in favor of healing. You inspire, you strengthen, you transform. And that's why the next step of your mission is no longer in what you suffered, but in what you will do with it from now on. The time has come for you to redefine your identity. Because no matter how much life has tried to convince you that you are just a survivor, the truth is different. You are a conductor of meaning. Viktor Frankl said that the deepest desire of human beings is not comfort, but meaning. And the chosen ones know this instinctively. They do not seek an easy life. They seek a life with purpose. Because deep down, they know that they came into the world with a divine mission. To survive is to continue existing. But to lead with meaning is to transform existence into direction. It is when you understand that every pain, every loss, every silence was preparing you for something much greater. To carry light, to guide paths, to be the spiritual answer that others don't even know they need yet. And this is not about having everything figured out. It is about having a heart that chose to continue, even when hurt. The marked soul of the chosen is not fragile. It is firm. It is resilient. It is made of unshakable faith and silent courage. Even when everything said stop, she said go. Even when no one understood, she kept going. And that, in itself, is already a powerful testimony. It doesn't matter how many times you fell. What matters is that you got up. And each time you did so, it was as if you were saying, "My mission is not over yet." Frankl reminds us that meaning in life is not something we find ready-made. It is something we make. And you have done this. With every conscious choice, with every forgiveness released, with every cycle broken, you have guided your life beyond pain. This is spiritual leadership, not from pulpits or stages, but from real life, from behind the scenes, from the everyday where no one applauds, but God watches. So, the next time you look in the mirror, don't just see someone who survived. See someone who transcended, who used suffering as fuel for the awakening of the soul, who transformed an existential crisis into spiritual healing, who accepted the divine calling even without guarantees. You are more than the sum of your pains. You are a channel, a reflection of God's presence in motion. And perhaps this is the great invitation for what is coming now, not just to continue existing, but to live with intention, with courage, with awareness, because the path of the chosen never ends in pain. It begins there and continues to the light. And that light, now it is your responsibility to lead. Have you noticed how many times you've tried to run away from pain, when in fact it was a calling? How many times have you felt lost, when in fact you were being guided? The journey of the chosen is never obvious. It begins in silence, passes through shadow, and blossoms into purpose. But only those with a resilient soul understand that even suffering can be sacred when placed in the service of healing. From now on, I invite you to make a choice. Instead of hiding your story, how about starting to honor it? Instead of carrying pain as a burden, carry it as a purpose? Because what you have lived, no one can take away from you, but you can decide what you will do with it. You can transform your scar into light, your grief into legacy, your silence into voice. And if you've come this far, that's already a sign that the calling is active, that the mission is alive, and that your presence in the world has more impact than you can imagine. Believe me, what you carry within you can open paths for many people. All it takes is one step. All it takes is one choice. All it takes is one yes. If this message spoke to you, don't ignore it. Something in you has awakened, and it's time to act. Start by recognizing, what cycle in your family do you feel you've come to break? Think about it carefully, deeply, and if you want to share, the comments section is open for your voice. Your story could be the key that another soul was waiting to awaken. If this message touched an old pain within you, don't ignore it. Share in the comments. What cycle in your family do you feel you have come to break? Your story could be the key another soul has been waiting to awaken. Before I close, I want to reiterate the invitation. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave your like. Here, each content is made to touch the soul and strengthen your spiritual path. We'll see you in the next video. And until then, keep choosing to be light.